Jeremy, this book, Create the Future: Tactics for Disruptive Thinking, is phenomenal. And I'm going to say something I don't think I've said on the show before. I was up till 2 o'clock this morning reading this book. I mean, as Jay said, what's incredible about it is the insights and the actionable insights that are in it. It's also a visual delight. The book is just beautiful with graphics and illustrations, but it's also very clever in that it's two books in one. And depending upon how you actually open it. I don't know how you're going to do this on the Kindle or ebook version of it, but it's depending on how you hold it. It's actually two books in one. One of the topics that I think permeates this is certainly around innovation and disruption, as you would expect from the title. A few weeks ago, Jay and I had the opportunity to have Jonah Berger on the show talking about his new book. And one of the things he talked about in his book was how we as humans are predisposed to resist change and thus resist disruption and innovation. So my question for you is, how do we force ourselves to innovate? How do we force ourselves to truly create disruption?
Sure. I think a big realization, which sort of became a metaphor for part of the book, is that we really get caught in a path. And there's a couple of metaphors I like, but one is to think about the fact that a million years ago we were hunters in an eat or be eaten world, and that means we all have hunter instincts. Great. But 10,000 years ago, people planted the first seed, and when we did, we started repeating and optimizing whatever led to last year's harvest. And what happens is that trap of success is just one of 7 traps that keep us caught to the path. And it's not saying that you're not going to keep growing and becoming incrementally more successful. But what happens is we get caught in a path, not realizing there's other pathways we could get on. We have traps such as our own neuropsychology, the desire not to change, the traps of success, the subtlety of disruptive ideas around us. And these things just start compounding to the point that we just stay focused in our lane, not realizing where else we could be. And that explains why so many highly successful people, highly successful brands, so often miss out ideas that were even invented by them or directly in their market.
This idea of getting caught is very familiar to many of our listeners here on Social Pros, because the way social media works, the way social media is effective, changes constantly. And I think in many cases, the quote unquote best practices change faster than we can change our own social media strategy, especially in enterprise sized companies. What advice do you have for people who are in that role, Jeremy, who are like, look, I know we've got to do something different. Should we plan for innovation and say, every quarter, let's take a fresh look at what we're doing? Should we wait until we see some sort of innovation potential, until we are inspired, I guess would be the right way to go about that? What is sort of the way to make sure that you don't fall into this 4-foot, 8.5-inch trap?
Well, the realization would be that there's a variety of factors that happen in your life that cause you to stick to the path. And what's so interesting about it when you really dive deep, especially with the neuropsychological traps, is that you don't even realize what the other opportunities are. So one of the examples in the book that's so interesting would be, it's a paperclip exercise. And I've done it probably 100 times in keynotes, but I'll say to a room, or you could take this to your family, say, what can you do with a paperclip? And people will come up with some ideas, and I'll tell you what they'll say almost in the right order, which I can predict 90% of the time. They'll say, you can use it as a weapon, you can pick a lock, you can eject a SIM card, you can trade it, you can turn it into pieces of art, you can make a necklace, a bracelet, an earring, a toothpick, or hang a Christmas ornament. That list, in some level, happens almost every time, and the average group of adults gets to 10 or 15 ideas. But the average group of kindergarten kids gets to 200 ideas. And the reason why is because as adults, the way our brain works and our myelin pathways is that we channel down and think about the ideas that we've actually seen or done before. And you can go repeat that little paperclip exercise and try it, and you'll see those same ideas come up. And the implication when you start diving a little deeper in your brain is that you're not even seeing the other ideas that are within your potential. So when you become successful, you get caught in a groove and you only see the ideas close within your grasp. But there are all sorts of tactics that you can use. pattern-based thinking exercises, kind of miniature workshops, ways to look at your problem from multiple perspectives that force you to see other opportunities within your grasp. So the takeaway of bringing this back to a social media professional is to realize that there's actual things you can do to extract better thinking from your brain, and to realize that your own success is this enemy that blocks you from what you're actually capable of. And that's why the whole theme of the book is more not just innovation, but more specifically disruptive thinking.
Many people in the social pros community are using technology and artificial intelligence and machine learning more and more in different elements of their job. We've had folks on the show like Pattern 89, which uses really interesting machine learning to auto-optimize Facebook ads. And there's a panoply of other examples of how AI is making social media more efficient. When we bring on board in our day-to-day work lives, Jeremy, more artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, et cetera, does that give us inherently more opportunities to be innovative, or does it sort of shield us from innovative thinking?
So there's a whole realm of what AI can mean. Trend Hunter is an AI company, so I have a section that I'd written in that book on AI, but I want to step back to say there's something that's a really important lesson to think about when it comes to being a social media professional and the current types of AI tools we have today. And it's to make sure that you really recognize the difference of when you're using a technology that optimizes versus something that's finding you truly creative ideas. And I have this theory that we're in an era that's kind of dangerous because there are so many tools I can use now to try to find a 5% advantage that's almost guaranteed, that I start using all these tools and then I just start really optimizing instead of looking for the truly creative opportunities, which are probably in bluer oceans that other people aren't competing in.
But can you learn creativity, and do we kind of use that facilitation of a workshop in the right way to help us foster our creative skills and talents, or are we doing it all wrong?
Yeah, so as you age, you do become more intelligent. You get better at a number of things that are related to innovation, like being able to assess multiple turnouts, see problems from multiple perspectives, apply skills and tools to your thinking. But the danger is that we don't really recognize that we lose about 95% of our raw creativity, with that math being my example, the paperclip exercises, 200 ideas versus 10. And we don't realize that because we've gotten so much better at everything else. And so you really do need to put the steps in place in order to use tools, in order to not lose 95% of your raw creativity. It's a really important thing to recognize what we're losing versus what we're gaining, and there's ways around it. So there's all sorts of different things you can do to ensure that you're maximizing your creative potential. You just have to acknowledge straight up, it's impossible for you to maintain the same curiosity and creativity you had when you were 5 years old. That's just a change in your brain that is unstoppable. The only caveat is that if you do a lot of workshops and you're trying to always look at problems from multiple perspectives, your brain does still build myelin pathways that allow you to look at problems from multiple perspectives. So you don't have the raw creativity you had as a kid, but you can very much train your brain to be more consistently able to see different perspectives and different routes in certain problem sets.